I'm thinking of retiring.
Um, what?
You're what? Oh, thank God. Yeah, but first, I want a big win. Like, I want to go out on a bang. Well, everything's on fire, so I'm sure something's liable to go bang.
Hey, whoa. That was uncalled for, okay? But actually, yes, we would love actually we would love money, but you haven't really been giving us much of that lately.
Make something good, and we actually might spend money on it. I've done plenty of good things. I brought diversity, extra content, and some other things to my new empire.
Your new empire?
Hey, random question. Did you ever think of having a good story? What was that? Maybe some good character development? I'm not sure I know what you're talking about. Obviously.
Good, good. Everything is proceeding exactly as I have foreseen. I've got a bad feeling about this.
Well, I'm not surprised, but we're definitely getting screwed. George Lucas, please come back.
You are listening to X Wing Radio.
That's right. I'm David, that's Wesley, and this is X-Wing Radio, your weekly broadcast from a galaxy far, far away.
David, I'm real impressed with you. Honestly, you're finally getting the intro down. You're not stumbling over it. You're getting it first try. I'm very proud of you. It's taken a while. It's been a long road, but you know what? You got there. So, David, today's video is brought to you by. No, we don't have sponsors yet. Maybe ever. But David, what are we talking about today? You brought this topic to me. You found out about this news thing. So, talk to me about the topic for today's
So,
video.
well, how would you react if I told you that Kathleen Kennedy is retiring?
Well, here's the thing. I'd be jumping up and down for joy, but also like kind of cautiously, you know? I feel like that's a pretty good reaction because here's the thing. I mean, like in all honesty, like yeah, it's a good thing if she retires because she sucks. Maybe not at her. Well, no, she sucks at her job currently that she has. She might have been successful in the past, but running Star Wars has been running Lucasfilm has been an issue
So,
for her.
okay, yes. First off, let's just talk about Kathleen Kennedy in general. Her
Okay.
leadership of Lucasfilm as a whole. So, yes, originally he actually did have a pretty good resume. She was involved in some very impressive movies. She was, you know, there almost from the beginning with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, with some
Well,
like with the original Star Wars and Indiana Jones. But
hey, when you come highly recommended by George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, I mean, you're in pretty good company there. Like that's
yeah,
those are some pretty good people to be highly, rated by. So,
but the thing is, pretty much as soon as she, I guess, went out on her own and started working on Star Wars on her own, it didn't go well. Because okay, Lucasfilm pre Disney acquisition was responsible for arguably two of the most like recognizable franchises in all of movies. Now, granted, at the time, some of their more recent movies were not that well received. Crystal Skull, um, and of course the prequels. But if you look at the classic trilogies, the original Star Wars trilogy and the original Indiana Jones trilogy, those are probably two of the most well recognized, well respected, well loved movie franchises ever. And Kathleen Kennedy was involved in the production of both of those.
Real
But you know
quick,
who else
David,
was
I
involved?
want I want to
Go ahead. Go ahead.
well go ahead and finish your question, and then I got something I want to
Well,
say real
I was about
quick.
to say, you still had that leadership and direction from both Spielberg and Lucas.
Yeah. So I pulled up her IMDb here, right? And below it has a bunch of projects that she's, I guess, worked on in some capacity. And just listen to this resume, okay? Obviously, they have some, disappointments, but you got Crystal Skull here, Indiana Jones, Crystal Skull. You got let's see, Jurassic Park 3. Uh, let's see, there's a couple. Lost World, Jurassic Park, Lost World. Um, Jurassic Park. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know how much of a big success this was, but I love this movie growing up. Have you seen Hook? Peter Pan with
Oh yeah,
Robin
yeah.
Williams.
It's been a long time since I've
So
seen that
she
movie, but
apparently
yeah.
she has Back to the Part. There's Back to the Future Part 3, Part 2. Let's see, Back to the Future. The Goonies. I've never seen the movie, but I've heard a lot about it. Temple of Doom and E.T. Those are some of the things that they have on her IMDb. Those are not small things. Those are some pretty big
So,
projects.
like I said, she's worked alongside the likes of George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, like
Big names.
big names. Yeah, it's not a resume to shake a stick at,
Yeah.
but
What are you shaking at her, David? Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Anyways, so um
okay.
so yeah, I agree. I agree. Like when she came in, like okay. Here's the thing: when Disney was taken over by, or when Star Wars was taken over by Disney, that was what, 2012.
Yes, yes.
So you and I, David, were we only 10 years old? Is that right? That sounds so wrong. That's how the math works out. Anyways,
Um,
we were not that aware, one way or another. We were not that aware of what was going on, but I remember hearing stuff about it, like, okay, Disney's, you know, buying out uh Star Wars. So, but I didn't know who Kathleen Kennedy was. Who did? Probably people in Hollywood, but nobody else really knew who Kathleen, like normal people did. If you're a producer, you're usually not that well known unless you've done other things outside of just producing by the mainstream or whatever, right? So we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And then a couple years later, 2015, we get Star Wars: The Force Awakens. This is the first Star Wars movie we've ever seen in theaters, and the first thing Disney Star Wars has put out. It's pretty cool.
mhm.
Sure, there are a lot of problems in the story, and I think I remember you and me talking about it like there were problems, but we were like, hey, we just got to see Star Wars in theaters. That's pretty cool. And, it was. But then they kept making things. Now, the year after, 2016, they did come out with Rogue One, and Rogue One still one of my top 5 at least movies, top 3. So, and it's definitely up there. I feel like for most Star Wars fans, like I think it's a good quality movie. But then they made Rise of Skywalker. No,
Last
The
Jedi.
Last Jedi. Then The Rise of Skywalker. And then they started making all these shows. Now, they started off with a banger in Mandalorian, and they did a great job with The Mandalorian. But then they decided to keep trying and doing worse and worse. It's not like every single piece of content that comes out of Disney Star Wars is absolute garbage, but they have made a lot of mistakes. I was talking
And
with Sarah about this. I was talking with Sarah about this earlier. When they went into the sequel trilogy, they didn't have a plan. They didn't know, they didn't have a layout of how they were going to do this trilogy. They were just going to bring in people to write movies, and they were going to mesh it all together. They didn't have a plan. That's not a good idea. You're gonna fail because of creative differences. It's just gonna happen. People are gonna be like, "Hey, I want to do this," and someone's gonna be like, "Well, I actually want to do this. I'm still gonna do it," and then you got problems.
even
But
George, even from the beginning, had an idea of the whole story. Now, of course, at the beginning, he thought that A New Hope could be the only movie that ever got made. And
hmm
despite what he might say, he definitely changed his mind on a lot of stuff.
oh
You can
yeah,
it's obvious when you watch the movies. But he had a
oh yeah.
plan.
hmm I'm sorry. What was mentioned in A New Hope? Oh, the Clone Wars. Yes, he had an idea.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not
And
saying he knew all of what the Clone Wars was going to be in A
which
New Hope. I'm saying that he had an idea for what his universe was going to look
which
like.
it's interesting too
That's all I'm
because
saying.
so I think I texted you earlier. I'm reading Heir to the Empire right now.
Yeah, right
Um
there.
yeah, I don't know what that was. Uh,
David's having
anyway,
a stroke. Oh no! Somebody kill him.
don't think that's how that works.
Hey, I'm saving you from having a stroke.
Good point. Anyway,
You're welcome, David. This is the gratitude I get. God, come on. David, this is why nobody likes you, because you can't say thank you. I mean, sure, you can't say it if you're dead, but you know what? A simple thank you beforehand would be nice.
right. Anyway, but as I was saying, it's interesting seeing Timothy Zahn's interpretation of a lot of this stuff because he does get into some because this book came out in '91, well before Clone Trooper was even imagined by the general public.
Yeah.
It's interesting looking back at his idea of what the Clone Wars was because he does talk about some of that. But we'll get into that later when we talk about um, Heir to the Empire. Stay tuned for in September. Um, which that's next month. Next month is September, Wesley.
I'm somewhat aware.
Also, I want to point something out that I'm pretty much just proving them right at this point. I see you've already seen this comment because you replied to it, but we got a comment on the episode 2 weeks ago on YouTube saying that we need to introduce ourselves at the beginning of the episode, which we normally do, where I introduce us at the beginning of the episode. Maybe we need to go more into that. I don't know.
I, I would
But
say well we did we did in that video.
yeah.
We did in
So
that video.
maybe we should take a little more time and introduce ourselves. I don't know. But the second thing he said
Wasn't sure what he
is
meant by that.
second thing he said is keep David on topic. He seems to like Or he seems like he needs to be reeled in sometimes. And I'm
Yeah,
probably just
which a
proving
second
this comment right at the moment, but
well, a second ago, I was making the joke or whatever, and you were like, anyways, and I was going to bring up the comment because I was like, in that they were talking about how you need to be reeled in, and I was like, sometimes I don't know if I need to be reeled in. I feel like it just goes back and forth. It's probably whoever has the brain cell or half a brain cell, but like I told you earlier today, you're gonna make me think. It's gonna get down to a quarter, so hey, we would have made some money. Not much, just a quarter, but Anyways, so what were you saying?
back to
Hey, I like I said, it's a chaotic mess, but you know what? It's something that apparently we enjoy doing. So,
right,
by golly, we're gonna do it.
right. So back to the topic at hand.
Well, you were talking about Timothy Zahn's interpretation of the Clone Wars. Was that all you had to say about that? Dang, that was
Oh, I
pointless.
mean, I do have more, but I want to save that for when we actually talk about Heir to the Empire, because you have not read it yet. But I
No,
can
I
touch on it
have
more.
to start
I
working
can
on
touch
that.
on it more if you want me to.
Don't touch stuff, David. That's not yours.
But
I don't know. What are we talking about?
we're supposed to be talking about Kathleen Kennedy in Disney Star
Well,
Wars.
she's not an heir to the Empire.
No, although surprisingly, Mara Jade actually is, which I thought she was introduced later on in the Thrawn trilogy, but she's actually in Heir to the Empire, which is interesting.
Dang, I could have told you that.
Anyway, back to the Disney acquisition of Star Wars. And you're right. It was actually pretty good for the first.
Hooyah! Now I got it. What were you saying?
The Disney
Oh, it's only
acquisition.
13 hours.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised about that. But which I listened to like six of it today. Back to the Disney acquisition of Star Wars, which you're right that it originally wasn't actually that bad.
I think it got real. Okay, so here's the thing. I think Disney Star Wars got bad slightly before Marvel tanked because of when, like, okay, I think The Last Jedi was really when people were like, what are you doing? And that came out in what, 2018?
2017.
17? Okay. So I think people started to have a lot of problems with it when that came out because it was kind of starting to prove that Disney didn't have a plan for the trilogy. And obviously, okay, I think it was 2018 when Solo came out, right? Or did that come out? I think 2018, right?
2018 when Solo came out.
Okay. So they had they had the bomb that was The Last Jedi, and so that's part of the reason why Solo bombed. Now, in the article, they even talk about how Solo has the, you know, uh, title. What is it? They have the thing of they lost money on the project, but that was because of problems behind the scenes. The movie's really not that bad, but people were so done with what they had seen with The Last Jedi, they were tired of it. They didn't want to go see the next Star Wars film. And
So
that kind of is just how
Solo
things are.
Solo suffered from really three things other than Kathleen Kennedy. Um, so one was the fact that yes, it was so close to The Last Jedi. I believe it came out in May of 2018, and The Last Jedi came out in December of 2017. So it wasn't even 6 months later.
Yeah.
It was less than 6 months later. So that, coupled with the fact that no one wanted to see, or not, I won't say no one, but there were a bunch of people who didn't like the idea of recasting Harrison Ford as Han Solo, even for a sequel.
Yeah.
And had a third point. Um,
The writing behind the scenes and directing behind the
yes,
scenes.
all the
Drama.
drama with the writing, the change in directors, all that.
Yeah. But I feel like that's kind of around the time into 2017, 2018, maybe close into 2019 that people were starting to realize or starting to see problems with what was coming out. And, you know, there are people who like the sequels. God bless you. But, that's your own opinions. Um, but like for those of us who don't like them, we had problems with The Force Awakens, but The Last Jedi was really what are you doing?
The turning
And then
point, yes.
Rise of Skywalker came out. And when was that?
2019, December of 2019.
That so that was 2019. Okay, I wasn't sure if it came
Yep.
out. So 2019, and Star Wars fans are like, "What are you doing?" The you okay? Again, me and Sarah were talking about this earlier. The actual line that somebody got paid to write was somehow Palpatine has returned. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm aware that in books and comics that Palpatine did transfer his essence into a clone, and Luke had to fight him. I'm aware of all that. But this movie took that idea. Okay, David, I'm sure you haven't seen it because I know you don't probably really care one about Deadpool or about Marvel right now. But in the beginning of Deadpool and Wolverine, he goes and digs up Wolverine's corpse from Logan.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I wasn't sure what you knew about it. So,
Yeah.
anyways, he essentially defiles the grave, right? Well, that's essentially what they did to the topic of Palpatine coming back. They defiled the grave for no reason either. They could have done a good job. They could have stuck to the source material, but for some reason, Disney Star Wars has. I mean, obviously they decanonized all of Legends, which a lot of people had a problem with, but then they were like, well, maybe they'll take a lot of the source material, change a couple things, and then give us back essentially what we already had. Well, that wasn't what happened. They took what they wanted, which was none of it, and rewrote it. And so we get the Rise of Skywalker, and it's an awful movie, and there's it makes no sense, and we get all that. Star Wars fans aren't happy. But then we have the announcement of The Mandalorian, a Disney Plus TV show, which that came out when? 2020 or 2019 as
I
well?
believe it was 2020.
Okay, because I thought it came out afterwards. Well, anyways, The Mandalorian was great. Everyone loved that. That was a success. And so, season two as well, and then season three kind of dropped off a little bit, but people still liked The
Okay.
Mandalorian as the seasons came out. But you know, Disney Plus was a success with the start of The Mandalorian. And people were like, hey, Star Wars, this is great again. We'll just forget about that sequel thing.
Okay,
But
but
you had a point.
for some reason
Continue.
Disney Star Wars does this a lot. When they first started remake or making new movies. Hey, these are pretty good. Oh crap, go back, go back, go back. Like undo. you know, Control Z. Like,
David, so sorry to interrupt, but when I was working at the plant, I'd work on these big shelves for the blocks to sit
mm,
on while they set. And so I would go and I'd cut the shelves off, any shelves that had, rusted. So I'd cut them off. Well, there were a couple times where when I was making my adjustments to the shelf, I would cut something off, and then I'd look at it and I'd be like, oops, I didn't want to cut that off. And in my head, because I had been doing so much on the computer and like editing and stuff like that, I would in my head try to control Z that, and then I'd be like, wait a minute, this is real life. I can't undo something I've already done. Like that's cut off. I gotta fix it now. I can't just
Hmm.
put some tape on it and be done with it.
Exactly, exactly.
And it would,
But
and it like literally, it was just like Control Z. Oh, that doesn't work. Never mind.
but that's almost what we tried to do with this. Like that's what we wanted to do, I'll say.
Well,
And then Disney started making shows.
yeah,
And, we got Rebels, which was, yeah, it was a kid show, but for what it was really good. It was another, like, you know, not gonna say
a little
necessarily home
kiddier
run,
than
but not necessarily home
a
run,
little
but it
kiddier
was,
than Clone.
yeah, a little kiddie in Clone Wars, but for all intents and purposes, for what it was a really good show. They
Yeah,
introduced
still good.
Grand Admiral Thrawn into canon. Amazing. Then we got Mandalorian. Then we got season 7 of Clone Wars. Then we got Mandalorian season 2. Okay, these shows are looking really good. The movies suck, but these shows are actually looking really good. Book of Boba Fett. What did you do? What happened? Mandalorian season 3. Kenobi. Ahsoka and then the Acolyte. Like, okay, Andor was pretty good, which we are getting
I was
season
gonna say,
2, so I'm kind of happy
Andor
about that.
got
But
Andor got overlooked again, like it did when it was released.
but like I said, Andor was underrated. But like I said, and Eli, okay, I even like Ahsoka. But when compared to even Mandalorian season 1 and season 2, or Clone Wars season 7, or even Rebels, I don't know. It just wasn't as good as it could have
I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, for why Star Wars fans are so fed up with Disney Star Wars is because since they've started putting out stuff, it has been a roller coaster. I mean, we've been going back and forth between, hey, that was great, and hey, what the heck are you doing? Like, it's just an up and down, up and down. We're not entirely sure what's going on. Like, there has been some really, really good things out of Disney Star Wars. That tastes awful coming out of my mouth to say, but they did make season 7 of the Clone Wars. Now, maybe the beginning of the season wasn't as great, but the ending was amazing. And they made Rogue One, they made, Mandalorian. And it's like those are some really great things. But then you made some trash too. I mean, I don't know if they were starved for content and they just decided to go digging in the dumpster, but like, you know, it's just
okay.
a roller coaster of you don't know what you're gonna get when you watch a Disney Star Wars show anymore. It could be great, it could be awful. I mean, who
And
knows? They
the
don't
most
even know.
recent and the most recent installment in Star Wars, The Acolyte. Well, I know you and I liked it better than I think most people, but
I would
still,
have given it more than a 17% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
but still, how do you how do you take these stories, take the characters from this time period, throw all that out the window and make this? Also, why would you even set it at this time period? Go back and do a show where we get to see Darth Bane. Okay, I love Darth Plagueis. I love the Plagueis novel, but that's not really an exciting time in the Star Wars history. Go back
No.
and just let's see the Old Republic. Let's see Darth Bane. Like some of this just like insane, some of these insane Sith from that time period. Where was that?
what what I don't, and we've talked about this before. What they don't understand, and what I mean by they is Disney, Star Wars, the executives, Kathleen Kennedy, any of that. What they don't understand, and I'm kind of surprised by this because so the original concept for today's video was we were going to react to some other YouTubers' videos, one being Star Wars Theory. Um, that did not work out, obviously, because we're not doing that. But in his video where he's going over this article, I think at one point he talks about Dave Filoni and how at one point he was a big Dave Filoni supporter and thought he was doing such a great job with it. But more recently, he's been kind of like, "What are you doing? Like, you know, you're over some of this stuff. Like, why is some of this stuff getting greenlit?" Um, mainly being the acolyte or whatever. But the thought with it too is like Dave Filoni is a Star Wars fan, so I don't understand where the disconnect is with him. Um, but I understand where the disconnect is with like the executives. There is so much content for Star Wars, David. We have decided moving forward that we are going to read through one Star Wars novel a month. We will get a good bit of months out of that because there are so many books and so many like, comic there's so much content out that's now considered legends in Star Wars. And what they don't understand is we don't want them to go in and change those stories. What we want is them to take those stories and make movies and shows out of them. The Lord of the
Right.
Rings is a perfect example of this. What did they do when they made The Lord of the Rings, David? They took the book and they did their best for movie length. I mean, obviously they're 3 hour long movies, like it's still long, but they did their best to take this whole big compilation of not compilation, but this whole big long story and compile it into a reasonable amount of time. Now,
And
sure, they
guess
had to
what?
cut some things out.
Guess what? It is still, to this day, one of, if not the best book to movie adaptations ever.
Yes. And David, you are a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Like I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. You and Sarah are like mega fans. You are huge. Y'all both love Lord of the Rings in the movies.
Mhm.
Obviously, yes, they cut some things out. Sure, there are things that you and Sarah probably are like, "Oh, I would have loved to see that." But you're not complaining about what you got. So here's the thing. Okay, and then here you have this. So for Lord of the Rings, we're not a Lord of the Rings podcast. We're going to talk a little, just briefly, about Lord of the Rings. For the Lord of the Rings, all of Lord of the Rings history is laid out. There are things that happen, and there are things to be known from the beginning, maybe not to the end, but I know at least from the beginning till when the events of Lord of the Rings, and some a little bit afterwards. That's not neither here nor there. But it's all kind of laid out. So when Rings of Power, an Amazon TV show, came out, they said, "Hey, this is the time frame, this is the era in which we are going to be setting this TV show." So Lord of the Rings fans are like, "Oh, I know what happened during that time frame." Then we get the show, and you're sitting there watching it, and you're like, "This doesn't line up with what has been written." And the show didn't get rated as good because it strayed away from the source material. The Lord of the Rings fans did not like the show because it did not stick to the source material. Perfect example. There's plenty of source material for Star Wars. You've strayed away from the source material. We don't like it. Maybe if you decided to go back to the actual source material that we have plenty of, you can make some minor tweaks, but do not change the story because we like it because of the story. And take that and put it on the big screen. Put it in a Disney Plus TV show. Stop changing Star Wars because you think that you need to have a good new idea. I'm sorry, Hollywood. You haven't had an original idea in probably the past 30 years. So stop trying to come up with something new now. Just do what you've been doing and regurgitate the same content in different forms. If you do that, most Star Wars fans are probably going to be a little bit happier with you. I rest my
And,
case.
and to that point, yes, in Legends, so, basically George Lucas would license the Star Wars name to just about anyone who, waved a dollar in front of his face.
Yeah,
But I don't know. It probably had to be a Benjamin, not a George Washington. But
probably a couple Benjamins.
still, George Lucas would license the Star Wars name to just about anyone. So we
Hmm.
got a ton of Star Wars stuff. A ton. Some of it contradicts each other. Some of it contradicts what we got later, the prequels. But if you just took the most beloved storylines from all this stuff, you could make an actual canon that flowed that, you know, fans would be happy with because we're getting to see some amazing storylines that we already love. And you'd basically just be printing money. Or you could just stick with
Yeah,
what George Lucas originally pitched for a sequel trilogy, and then, you'd probably also be printing money. But,
yeah. Which we should
and,
talk about
and,
that at some point.
and
The
we
original
should.
idea for what it
But
was.
that herein lies the problem with it, Lucasfilm under Disney and under Kathleen Kennedy's direction, is they took a gold mine, and by the time they got to their fourth theatrical release, they lost money.
Yep.
So I know you mentioned an article a few minutes ago. I don't think we actually introduced it yet. So basically, the whole premise of this video,
Exactly.
what made me think of this as an idea, was actually because there was a Star Wars theory video. I've watched several other videos from different people, um, but which I'll link some of those in the comments down below. Uh, at least the Star Wars theory one because he's where we got the idea from. But going to this article from the Park Place about Kathleen Kennedy possibly retiring. So basically, the title of this article is Kathleen Kennedy ready to retire, but is waiting for a win, according to entertainment analyst. So, what do you think of that, Wesley?
I think she should just retire. I mean, let's think about this. Obviously, we've just gone over all the different content that Star Wars has put out recently since Disney took over. But what was the last good things Disney Star Wars put out? Would it have been Mandalorian season 2? That was like 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
Um, Andor came out after that,
That's
but
true. But would you
okay,
consider
I would almost say Mandalorian season 2 over Andor because even though Andor was good, it wasn't
it
successful
wasn't
because
a
they didn't
success?
market it. But even then,
And this even says,
I don't even know how much Mando season 2 was a success because of the whole premise of going straight to streaming. None of these shows have made money. None of them. So I don't know what kind of a win they're wanting, or at least she's wanting. I don't know if she's wanting just something
well,
well received, or if she's wanting something financially well received. Financial
okay,
win.
so if we go back to the last thing that was well received, we probably need to go back to Mandalorian season 2 because Andor was overlooked. As good as
Mhm.
it was overlooked. So I think that that would probably be the last win as far as what was like received really well. Like I mean obviously, yes, Andor was received well, but like there were a lot of people who either haven't watched it, didn't watch it till a lot later, yada yada yada. Now, the last financial win that they've had would probably have to go back to 2016 when they had the Rogue One release,
Or well,
because I don't think they've had anything.
I think they did make money on the Last Jedi just because people didn't know, but because of the Last Jedi, Solo lost money, and the Rise of Skywalker I think did break even, but didn't make a ton.
Well, I'll say as far as financial and critical success, I think that you'd have to go back to Rogue One.
Yeah,
Yes, Last Jedi did make money, but we didn't know what we were walking into. Also, think about if it was actually good, how much more money it could have made. I mean, it didn't pass The Force Awakens because The Force Awakens people actually liked. Obviously, with the rest of it, it showed some problems, but out the gate, new at Star Wars. I mean, you and I have talked
okay.
about how many times we went to see it. So,
After like 2 or 3 weekends of the Last Jedi being out, most people probably knew it sucked, whether they had
yeah,
seen it or not. So that definitely did hurt it.
yeah. So I think that, but either way, I mean, David, you're having to go to at minimum back 2 years, right? Because Mando season 2 came out in 2022, or was it 2021?
I think it was 22.
I was thinking it was 22. So you have to go at minimum back 2 years. And at most you have to go back, how long ago was 2016? Oh my God. All right. So math is hard and I don't want to think about 2016 because that was a lot
That
longer
was
ago than I
8 years
want it
ago.
to be. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, it's crazy.
See,
So,
I, I, I came to the conclusion 8 years ago and then I said, no, that's wrong because it wasn't that long ago.
Wesley, you and I are getting old. Let's just face it.
We're not even old yet.
All right. So, I'm going to go ahead and just start reading through this article. If you have anything to interject, go ahead and, you can interject. I do have sunflower seeds in my mouth right now, so hopefully that's not going to inhibit my ability to read through
You
this.
wanna you wanna read back and forth
No, I should be
instead of
able to
one of
read.
us reading the whole thing?
I should be able to read through. At least I'll read through this little first bit here. Okay. So,
I was gonna say we could just bounce back and forth just so we're not one reading the whole thing.
okay. Oh yeah. So I'll read through this first little bit that's on the screen right now, and then you can read through the
Okay.
next little bit. All right. So Kathleen Kennedy apparently has something in common with much of the Star Wars fan base. She wants Kathleen Kennedy to leave Lucasfilm, but the according to Film Threats Chris Gore, she's only willing to walk out the door under one condition. Namely, she wants to leave on the heels of a massive critical and commercial success. That's something Lucasfilm hasn't experienced for quite some time. As we just mentioned, probably for a critical and commercial success, the last thing they released would have been Rogue One.
Yeah.
That I feel like could fit that description. Since Disney's
Hmm.
original acquisition of Lucasfilm in 2012, the company has undergone direction of film industry veteran Kathleen Kennedy. Back then, the longtime George Lucas and Steven Spielberg associate promised George that she would take care of his life's work. She has done anything.
That is the truth. It's crazy. All right.
Mhm.
Under Kathleen Kennedy, the Star Wars franchise has gone from the most evergreen IP of all time to a sour note punching bag for YouTubers and streamers of the world. Hey, that's us. Uh, streamers the world over. Wait, how's that word? For YouTubers and streamers the world over. Anyways, I'm not thinking that hard. All right. Kennedy presides over the deeply unpopular Star Wars presided over the deeply unpopular Star Wars sequel trilogy, which saw the destruction and eventual death of Han Solo and Luke Skywalker while pushing punishing is true too, but by pushing a younger and more diverse cast. Yeah, that's one thing too, is like you look at it, and I know we've talked about this before, but like you look at it like we left Han and Leia with, you know, the conclusion of a great love story. I understand, where their story kind of goes anyways. But like you took what we last saw of him and you just ruined it, and then you killed him.
I'm gonna say it again. What does Lucasfilm have against Harrison Ford?
I mean, he's made them a lot of money.
But they have Lucasfilm is arguably the reason Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford today.
Yeah.
Han Solo and Indiana Jones are two of Harrison Ford's biggest roles, and pretty much launched his career.
Yeah.
And
And
yet,
as far as the Luke, go ahead.
and yet, the recent projects they've done, Lucasfilm has done with Harrison Ford, has completely crapped all over his characters and arguably his legacy.
Yeah. The good news is that most people who are fans of the Indiana Jones franchise and of Star Wars franchise usually do not include the movies that tarnish his legacy in their canon. So, there's that.
Mhm.
Um, but on the front with like Luke, right? I when stuff started coming out about how they treated Mark Hamill with everything pertaining to it and how he didn't really have much of a say or know much about Luke dying and all that stuff. That kind of ticked me off a little bit because, here's the thing. Mark Hamill has said some things that I could care less about in recent history. Politically, I've kind of ignored most of that because he is a rich Hollywood elite. So, you got to kind of tune out most of that. But as far as his legacy goes with Luke Skywalker, I love the guy. He's done a great job. I love Luke Skywalker. And, you don't bring someone like that on set and just crap all over everything that they've done, which is essentially what they did. I mean, I've seen a lot of, I don't know why I've been seeing a lot of these memes recently. But I've been seeing a lot of memes recently where it's like, Luke Skywalker. It's like, I see good in him. This is my father. I'm not gonna kill him. And it's like, what about your nephew? Oh yeah, in a heartbeat. It's like, Luke Skywalker, this is not the character. Like, it makes no sense. So yeah, they tarnished the character and the character growth that Han had in the original trilogy, and they tarnished the character of Luke Skywalker, and there's no reason for it. There was no explanation for it. There was it just doesn't make sense. And I mean, obviously, we've talked about it at length. You know, this is a popular topic currently because of the new article coming out about Kathleen Kennedy, but we beat that horse of Disney Star Wars sucks a million times and probably will continue to do so. But I mean, the sequels suck because there was no thought or planning behind it besides, I guess they wanted to ruin Star Wars.
Mhm. Now, to one of your points that you just mentioned, you brought up, talking about, Mark Hamill saying something, things politically. And I agree, I 100% agree with you about that I could care less what an actor says, outside of a franchise. That's their own personal opinion. They're entitled to it. I could care less what it is.
One thing, I completely respect Kurt Russell for this matter, and he's an old legend in the film industry and, iconic actor. It's done plenty of things. But when a lot of actors were talking about their political views on Twitter and all, he reached out and he said, "Nobody cares about what you think. Just shut up and work on your craft." And I was like, I don't even know what this guy thinks. He could be the complete opposite side of the wherever. And like it doesn't matter because he understands that we're not here to listen to his political views. I'm sure I understand that some people are. Some people only get their views from other people. But
Hmm.
for most people, we nobody cares. We just want to watch you in a movie because you're good at
But
what you do.
that's one thing. But when it starts leaching into Star Wars or any beloved franchise or just movies in general, that's
Mhm.
where I have to draw the line and say, no, we don't care.
Mhm.
Ultimately, we're not going to movies to and there's even like genres of movie, there are political documentaries to prove points. That's not what Star Wars is. It's not Star
Mhm.
Wars was never supposed to be some glorified activist movie for, you
Mm.
know, social justice or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. And that's what Disney Lucasfilm has tried to push into it. Like
Mhm.
the Acolyte. The majority of the problems with the Acolyte. Like I you and I feel like liked the Acolyte better because we to a point looked past some of this stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was a lot of this stuff in the Acolyte that did not need to be there, that did not add to the story whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why most people hated the Acolyte. And honestly, at this point, well, I do get kind of frustrated with people for saying things without actually watching the show. It's a valid point that we don't want to see this stuff anymore. We just want entertainment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, we've talked about this. I understand that some things need to have like a message to it. I mean, it's great watching like older shows, right? And you have your like sitcoms and they're funny, but by the end of it, like there's a lesson to be learned throughout it. And like I understand that there are some aspects to those like there is a point to having some things like that in shows and movies. Also, I understand the world applications of, you know, uh, having um stuff in shows. So I'm watching through a show right now. It's I've talked to you about this, but I'm watching through The Boys, and there's a show that's in the same universe that I'm watching through right now. Um, that's called Gen V. In the show, there's a character who is gender fluid. Like I think their superpower is like they can flip back and forth, and I think there's a guy and a girl, and depending on which form they take, there's I think different superpowers. They haven't really dived into it, but there's that character, and that's obviously a topic of a big topic currently in today's world with stuff like that. But in the show, they don't focus on that part of the character. It's just who the character is. It's part of the story, but it's not a focal point of the story. It's like if you have a love interest. and it's the same sex as the main character, that's fine, whatever. Because I understand that's how the world is. Okay, you can bring elements like that, but when you focus on it and you shove it down our throats, that's when you overstep. Having elements from the world, like when you see in a movie someone having a phone, that's an element from the world. Obviously, that's gonna be something, but like, and I know they do this in movies anyways, but like, don't shove down the phone that, oh, this is, don't put product, I mean, you're gonna put product placement, but don't have an ad in the middle of the movie saying, oh, iPhone is the best thing in the world. This is great. Don't take me out of the story to promote something. You know, we're here for an escape from reality. We just want to be entertained.
Biggest problem with it is what Disney does and what Hollywood in general does. It's just virtue signaling.
Hmm.
It's not, and to a point, I even have to wonder if they even actually care or support the things that they say they do, because it's almost like, you know,
It's whatever makes them money.
right now it's, which it doesn't, and I think they're starting to figure that out. But the big thing, it's cool to be woke.
Yeah.
Most people are getting fed up with the woke stuff, so it's not
Go
actually
woke,
making
go
them
broke.
money, but they think it is, so that's why they're doing it. It's not.
Yeah.
It does not have to do with that, and that's why it's not. They're not actually taking the time to make good stories, and then maybe they incorporate this stuff into it, and like what you were saying. No, it's like, okay, we're making a new movie. The main character has to be female, and they have to have
Hmm.
a best friend who's black, and there has to be a gay character. No, that's not how this works. It's
Like, yeah, like, if your story needs that, that's fine. But don't say this is how you start it and then go from there. Like, write a good story and make characters that will fit the
and
description or the
don't
fit the story.
don't create a character whose only motivation is either their gender identity, sexual orientation, or race.
Hmm. Yeah,
Don't, like, that does not, like
those.
Ray. I feel like the whole thing with Ray is that, you know, why she's better than Luke Skywalker is because she's female. But
The thing.
that's
Okay,
almost the
and
way that they try to portray it.
the thing with Ray is that, and we've beaten this horse so many times. There was no character development.
No, there was not.
Luke had character development. If you modeled Ray off of Luke, and if you just copied almost beat for beat all the original trilogy for the sequel trilogy, which you kind of already did with oh blah, 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 with Force Awakens, you would have a character that's much more likable. I mean, I feel sorry for Daisy Ridley because she had problems with playing Rey.
Mm,
But when you're in the role and you do what you're told. I mean, that's
okay.
kind of how it is. I hate that she gets so much hate for it because I don't think she's a bad actor. I think she had bad writing and bad character
No,
development from the people who
she's a good
made the
actress,
movies.
and I would even argue that the character in the beginning had potential. They didn't do
Yeah.
anything with
Oh
it.
no.
The character was
In the
stagnant.
beginning, yes.
Okay,
Um,
perfect example.
but like,
Ray, I know we've beat this horse so many times, as you said, but the thing with Ray is Disney will blame the fans for being sexist as to why we don't like Ray, which
mhm.
you is not that hard to see that that is incorrect.
I mean, sure,
A
there are
lot,
people who are
yes,
sexist
there
and
are,
do
there
think
are,
that Ray
but
sucks
a lot
because
of
of
the,
that, but that's
but a lot of the
like
same fans,
0.1%.
exactly. A lot of the fans who dislike Rey love Ahsoka,
Mhm.
and in Legends love Mara Jade,
We also are overlooking the character of Leia. Like, here's the
who's
thing, Star
awesome.
Wars,
Yeah,
you didn't need to get woke. You just needed to follow the formula that George already started. I'm sorry, was Leia a damsel in distress?
the
Sure, you could say
whole.
maybe she was at the beginning.
Okay,
You could say
Wesley.
maybe she was at the beginning, but at the beginning she was telling off Tarkin, she was telling off Vader, and then once they got her out of the cell, she was leading the charge out of there.
The
She was not
whole
a damsel in distress.
the
She
whole
led the
point,
rebellion.
the whole point, and even I think George even had it as kind of a joke in the movie was that Han and Luke thought Leia was a damsel in distress. And then when they break her
Hmm.
out, she's taking charge, telling them what to do.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, you didn't need to start trying to develop well-written female characters. Star Wars already had well-written female characters. You came in and said, "Here's a crappy one that we're gonna put in front of you. Oh, you don't like that? Well, you're sexist." No. And also, here's the thing. You're also assuming that all Star Wars fans are 30-year-old males living in their parents' basements. There are plenty of Star Wars fans that are girls who still do not like the sequels and do not like the character of Rey. You gotta call them sexist against their own sex? Like, come on. You're grasping at straws for something that, one, you don't even understand. Like, it's been there. It's been there, Disney. Leia is a great character because she was well written. All right? Ahsoka is a great character because she was well written. And that's that. That's all we want. We just want well written characters. Mara Jade is crazy character, and she was well written. There's plenty of other examples. I
Okay,
mean,
look
you know, it's
look at
plenty.
okay. Ahsoka is actually a very good example of the disparity between how poor writing versus good writing can influence your opinion of a character. In the beginning, I'm not gonna say she was poorly written, but she was written in a way that wasn't as likable. She was
Yeah.
bratty. She was a teenager, but she
Mhm.
matured throughout the show. She matured character development. Try it sometime, Disney. She matured throughout the show into arguably one of the most beloved characters in all of Star Wars.
There's a reason why season 7 of the Clone Wars is like so beloved by Star Wars fans. There's a reason that we love it so much because I mean it's an amazing story and it tells a different side of Order 66. And obviously, Sokka being a beloved Star Wars character was the focal point of the end of or of season 7. So, it's David, I think Disney under Star Wars. Star Wars under Disney, I'll get it right eventually, and Kathleen Kennedy at the helm has been a ultimate disaster. Now, let's go back to reading this article here because I think at one point here it even talks about how Kathleen Kennedy isn't really that hands-on.
Mm-mm.
Now, if she's not hands on, that does not take the blame away from her. She's still whether she's given someone else say, "Hey, you green light what you feel necessary," or she's still getting the papers and just checking things off and allowing things to go. It's still her fault. She is at the helm, one way
Okay,
or
so
another.
yeah, let,
So
let's dive let's dive back
let's
into the
let's get
subject.
back into this and see what.
Okay, so Kennedy also oversaw Solo, a Star Wars story, which holds the distinction of being the first ever Star Wars film to lose money at the box office. We already touched on that. Um,
Mhm.
when you couple that the with critical and commercial failures on Disney Plus, like The Acolyte, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and The Book of Boba Fett, it becomes clear under Kennedy's supervision, Star Wars has fallen a long way from the powerhouse sci-fi franchise it once was.
One point to be made here. Again, we haven't gotten to this portion of the article yet, but if she is not hands-on with Star Wars, that just proves how little she cares about it. If we have someone at the helm who could care less about the job and could care less about what's made, then obviously we're in a bad spot. Obviously, we're going to get failure after failure after failure because she doesn't care. She's making her money one way or another. She could not be making money right now, and she's got plenty, for retirement. So continue with what you're reading, but I wanted to interject that.
Right. With every failed project and announcement that ultimately never sees the light of day, fans around the world ask a series of unifying questions. When will Kathleen Kennedy leave Star Wars? When will Disney fire Kathleen Kennedy? And how does Kathleen Kennedy still have a job? According to film theorist Chris Gore, on a recent episode of the Pro Show with WDR or WDW Pro, Kathleen Kennedy actually wants to leave Lucasfilm, but under very specific circumstances. Okay, so this is a quote. I think this is a quote from Chris Gore. Um,
Mm.
we've been hearing lately that Kathleen Kennedy is not very hands-on with Star Wars at this point. Hollywood scooper WDW, I don't know why it's so hard for me, WDW Pro said to Chris Gore on a recent episode of his live stream YouTube show, "Are you hearing anything similar that she may be operating in title only, at least for now?" Gore then confirmed that he was hearing similar rumblings before dropping a bit more information. She wants to retire and leave, Gore said, but she wants to do that on a whim. Gore went on to say, in order to leave, Kathleen Kennedy wants a huge success that she can ride into her retirement. This could be a smash hit television show or a major box office victory with a theatrical release. In other words, she wants to go out on a high note, like George Costanza in Seinfeld. Wow, what a reference that is.
Um, so that kind of clears it up. I think at the beginning we were talking about the fact of like, what does she consider a success? Well, obviously here it says a smash hit television show, so that could be like Mandalorian season 2, or a major box office success, which would be back up all the way to 2016 with Rogue One. So she's had a couple of them. She had the success that was Rogue One. That's the only theatrical success that Disney Star Wars has had. Now, when we talk about, obviously, you can say, well, Last Jedi made money, but the last good movie that's made good money, critical and
Well, and
commercial success.
arguably you could even say that the Force Awakens was probably the best because that set so many records. Box
Hmm.
office wise, that
Yeah,
was the best.
yeah. But I mean, nonetheless, it's been a long time. It's been since 2016 that they've had a theatrical success. Um, and then as of, TV shows, The Mandalorian is pretty much it. Sure, they had Andor, but it wasn't a hit when it first came out. So other than that, I mean, they've been kind of tanking in the TV show department too. I
So,
mean, I think people consider most of their they might consider the TV market to have been better. That's only because we've gotten The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian's been pretty good.
so the the big thing with this though is in order for Lucasfilm to have a win with Star Wars, which I'm assuming it would have to be Star Wars because everything else Lucasfilm has put out has been awful since Disney took over. Because I think what was it? The only other things that they've put out has been Indiana Jones 5 and I don't even remember the name of that fantasy show. Willow, is that it?
Oh yeah, Willow.
Yeah, which I feel like Disney has tried to bury. So
Yeah.
obviously it would, if you wanted to hit, it would have to be Star Wars because Star Wars is still the only franchise they have that still has at least somewhat of a pulse. But
Well, the thing is like Star Wars fans are still gonna love Star Wars no matter what you do to it. It's
okay,
just a
but
matter of do
here's
they
the
want what
thing.
you have to put out?
In order for Kathleen Kennedy to get a win in the manner that she's talking, I feel like Lucasfilm would have to, like, over the next 5 years, have to have banger after banger after banger before Lucasfilm regains the public's good conscience. The
Yeah,
Before they regain the fans' trust. Because
it's gonna be a while before they
if
get
they
that
really
back.
want, let's say a box office success, if they release another movie theatrically, whether it's the Ray movie or the Mandalorian and Grogu or Heir to the Empire or whatever they're gonna come out with first, no one's gonna go see it if Lucasfilm continues down this path that they're taking now. No one is gonna go see that movie. So I feel like they would have to set something up really, like, really well, with whatever shows or whatever, or it might be the third or fourth movie they release in theaters. If they're all really good, maybe they'll actually get, you know, a good reception, good box office success. But how long is that going to take, if it even happens?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I was kind of surprised to find this out, but she's old. She's
Yeah.
71. It says right there. And obviously, they never look it because they have so much cosmetics and stuff done that they typically don't look as old as they are. I mean, obviously, even just dyeing your hair a lot of times can help with that. But, she's old. I mean, you talk about 5 years, David, she gonna be mid 70s. Now I understand, that's but like she doesn't want to do this anymore. Who would? I mean, sure, she probably got some cushy job. Doesn't really matter that much. But I mean, she probably is done. She probably wants to take time and just live life.
I
Like
mean,
who wants to work when they're in their
I,
70s?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, if you look at the American government right now, 71 is young. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
David,
All I'm gonna say about that. Oh,
uh, I don't even know what to say
hey,
to that. We'll just
hey,
we'll just leave that where it's at.
no one is allowed to get mad at
Hey,
me about that because that's bipartisan. That's everyone.
as I say, that's just true. That's just true. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe she wants to retire. Maybe she wants to retire from film and go have start a career
Oh
in
gosh.
politics. I mean, she started out a little young, but she'll get
Yeah.
there.
Okay. Anyway, let's see.
Anyways,
So I'll continue reading. Sorry, we can move on from that because that's a dangerous rabbit hole right there. Oh gosh. Okay, she's wanting to go out with a big win, and she hasn't got one, Gore said. It stands to reason that Kennedy would want to retire. She's 71, as you just mentioned, and has enjoyed a long and highly lucrative career in Hollywood. However, if recent projects are indicative of what the studio under her leadership is capable of, then we might be stuck with Kathleen Kennedy for a very long time. That's kind of the point I was just making.
Well,
The
it can't be
Acolyte,
for that long.
fair enough. The Acolyte, for example, had an
We all
atrocious
gotta go
showing
sometime.
on Disney Plus, with the audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes falling as low as 13% during the show's initial run. It sits at 17% as of this writing. The Acolyte, right, also vanished
Another stroke.
from
Another stroke, David.
the Acolyte also vanished from Nelson's top 10 streaming shows after just 4 episodes. That Park Place editor-in-chief John F. Trent also pointed out that the Leslie Headland led live action series also or lost 75% of the Star Wars audience that tuned in to the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian. Kennedy has also announced a plethora of Star Wars projects that never saw the light of day, including a trilogy by Last Jedi director Rian Johnson, a Rogue Squadron movie by Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins, and a film by Marvel studio head Kevin Feige, and a film by Game of Thrones showrunners David Benioff and Dan Weiss, whatever. With Kennedy's current Lucasfilm contract reportedly set to expire in October, I doubt she's leaving. It will be
Oh God,
interesting
I
to
hope
see
she
if
is.
Disney renews her or if Lucasfilm might be searching for a new studio head. So we might know something within the next 2 months. I highly doubt this is going to
But
change. I highly doubt it.
here's the
But
thing, though, Dave. Here's the thing. Who is gonna take her place? Is it going to actually get better if someone does take her place? Or is it going to continue the same or be worse? Because, like this was said here, as of recent, apparently she's not even been hands on. So,
mm,
is the person who's already going to be over it already kind of over it now? And she's only there in title? And then, she leaves, this person gets bumped up, and we're kind of stuck in the same position because it's been basically running the same for a couple years.
so I have
Like, is
something
it
I
really
want to.
going to get better?
I do have something I want to bring up at that point, but I want to try to finish this article and then we can finish talking about this because we've already been recording for a good bit of time, and so
Oh, I thought you already
no,
finished it.
no rush, but no, there's still some left. All right,
Oh,
see, what
really?
do you think? Will Kennedy stick around until she gets that long-awaited big win, or will Disney force her out and force her to move on come October? Let's see, Marvin the movie monster Mon- mm, Montanero is a YouTube commentator and personality
I don't.
specializing.
Does that pertain to the video, or does that to pertain to the article?
Does it? I don't know if there's
I
anything
don't know if
left.
it does. I
I
think
don't know
that
if
was
there's
it.
anything left. Yeah, I
Um.
think that was it. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it then. Okay.
Hey, hey, hey. So this thing has comments below it. The first comment says, "Oh Jesus, she's gonna die in that job if that's her goal for her to get a win." That's funny.
Uh, wouldn't expect anything different from the internet, honestly, though. But okay,
Retire? She should be arrested for crimes against the nerd community.
okay. But here, and I know the video we mentioned earlier from Star Wars Theory, which, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it. I probably did. I'm just not remembering it. But that video from Star Wars Theory is kind of what sparked this whole idea in my mind because I had not heard this yet. And, of course, any chance to trash on Disney, which we have not done in a good while to this extent, we're gonna take. And hopefully this at
It's
least
been about
purges it
2
from our
weeks.
system. Hopefully this at least purges it from our system for at least a month. Probably not, but that's not the point. Well, actually, I feel like we're probably going to be trashing on Ubisoft more before we trash on Disney. Yep, stay tuned. But um, it's all the same thing though. Anyway, one thing Star Wars Theory mentioned, and I don't know if you mentioned this earlier. I think you did, but Star Wars Theory mentioned Dave Filoni. He mentioned that used to he would have defended Dave Filoni to like pretty much to the ends of the earth, but
Mhm.
now not so much. He signed off on the Acolyte. Ahsoka was
Yeah.
like his brainchild. Like again, both those shows I honestly I liked, but I know there's a bunch of valid criticisms to both those shows. I think I feel more so towards the Acolyte than Ahsoka, but there are still valid criticisms of Ahsoka. And Dave Filoni, being the creative head at Lucasfilm at the moment, signed off on both of those shows. Dave Filoni signed off on Bad Batch. Actually, he created Bad Batch, which, while not as
Yeah.
bad as some other shows that Lucasfilm has made, still was not the greatest. Didn't
Got a
do
little
anything.
repetitive.
Yeah, didn't really do anything for the universe, or even Tales of the Empire, which was kind of a letdown because I was hoping we'd get something more like Tales of the Jedi. But
Yeah.
herein lies the big thing. Even if Kathleen Kennedy retires, like you said, who are they going to get to replace her? I don't even know if I would trust Dave Filoni in that position at this point.
Let me throw a name at you that I just thought of that I might trust over Dave Filoni. What would you think if, and I don't know because he has other stuff that he's doing, and I don't think that he would do this, but it's just a thought. What are your thoughts on John Favreau?
So that is one thing I had heard. That was a theory going around when, or a rumor going around when Mandalorian season 2, I believe, came out, is that Disney was
Because
looking to replace Kathleen Kennedy with John Favreau.
he's more of the producer type. Even I mean, Dave Filoni is more of a writer, creative head type of a person. Anyways, John Favreau's been a producer for a while. Now I know he does a lot with Marvel, but he's done more with Star Wars in recent years, and he's done more good Star Wars than most have recently.
So, okay, that could work, which I know John Favreau is a Star Wars fan, or at least claims to be a Star Wars fan, which I am more inclined to believe because of The Mandalorian, which he had,
Yeah.
a direct hand in. But I feel like he would have to, surround himself with some people. Like I said, I'm not even sure if I fully trust Dave Filoni at this point. But let Dave Filoni keep all the animation. Get like I believe he even because he even had the idea of the Mandalorian having each episode having a different director, but all the directors for all 8 episodes of Mandalorian season 1 collaborated on the entire season.
Hmm.
They each had their episode that they directed, but they all collaborated together to make the show.
Yeah.
just based off of that, Jon Favreau at least has the ability to be a good leader.
Well, also look at what he has done in the past. Like Kathleen Kennedy, like we were saying, when she stepped out on her own, not so good. He's been on his own. I mean, Jon Favreau, you know,
Okay,
he's a
the
name
difference I
of
feel like
himself now.
is Kathleen Kennedy is not a director; she's a producer.
Yeah.
And while she has not directly directed anything in Star Wars, she's strictly a producer. Jon Favreau is a director that became a producer.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, like he directed all the Iron Man movies. Did he direct any of the Spider-Man movies? Because I know he was in those. I don't know if he directed them though.
I'm not entirely sure about that,
But
if he did or
okay,
didn't.
he's directed a lot in the MCU at least, and a lot of
Yes.
the better like during the golden age, I guess, of the MCU. He directed a lot of stuff, and so
Yes.
he's got the resume. But as we mentioned with Kathleen Kennedy, the resume is not quite everything. I feel like I would trust Jon Favreau maybe a little more than I would Dave Filoni, but at the same time, I don't know that I would really trust anyone 100%.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. So I am not seeing the Spider-Man movies under anything that he's directed.
Okay,
However, he did direct an episode of The Office.
interesting,
Which
interesting.
episode? Let's see. I'm looking to see which episode it is. Um, well, is this right? I'm gonna look in this. He directed the finale and Goodbye Michael. Is that
Huh,
true? Is that what I'm saying? Which those are both really good episodes.
yeah.
So I'm about to look into that a little bit more deeply. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's been a success with what he's done. So yeah. And you also need to bring in Sam Witwer as more of I don't know what role he plays currently or does, but I know they bring him in time to time for stuff, mostly voice
He
acting.
he's he needs to
He's a
be,
lot
or he's a
he's a
very
lot better.
good, I don't know, like, he doesn't I don't think he has the experience in writing or directing, so I don't feel like he would be good in those positions. Maybe if he was kind of tutored by someone at Lucasfilm to come more in that role, he might be good at
Yeah.
it, but they need to bring him in as a lore consultant in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Let
definitely.
him sit down, talk to the writers, and be a lore consultant.
In all honesty, what do you need to be a producer? Money? Because I mean, let's be honest here. Kathleen Kennedy hasn't directed movies. Kathleen Kennedy hasn't written movies. What qualifications does she have?
So, okay,
Like why
I just
why
looked this
like
up.
why can't Sam Witwer be a like the kind of person that they go to and they say, here's what we're doing. Sign off on this, or hey, do you like this kind of a deal? Like why not?
Yeah, like I said,
I mean, sure,
he's
a
not.
lore consultant. Like
Like I
a
said,
lore consultant, sure. I'm saying something more high up where he has more say to be like, hey, this sucks. Not just, hey, this isn't really good. This conflicts with the lore, and they're like, okay, we hear you. We're still gonna do it, kind of a deal.
honestly, he should be in a role similar to Dave Filoni being like the creative head. Like
Yeah.
again, I know
I mean,
he
I
doesn't
understand there's a
have the
level of
experience,
experience,
but he
but this is
he
Star
knows
Wars.
the lore.
Exactly.
Like,
Anyways, what were you gonna read?
so okay, I did find a list of all the directors from The Mandalorian. So you've got John Favreau, Dave Filoni, of course, uh, Deborah Chow, uh, Rick Fam Famuyiwa, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Taika Waititi. Honestly, for let's say The Acolyte, something set in a time period we've never seen on screen before, give it to Taika Waititi. He directed the best Thor movie. He directed Thor
Hmm.
Ragnarok. If you want something like, yes, you'd have to balance it to make it still feel Star Warsy. But if you something want something that, you know, feels enough removed from the rest of Star Wars, like he can do Star Wars that are, sci-fi that feels different than what like Star Wars or Star Trek feels like.
Yeah. I mean, he obviously he had the great success of Thor Ragnarok. He's directed other really good movies. He did direct Love and Thunder, so there's that. But he's directed a lot of good movies. So it's I'd agree that if you brought, I mean, that would have been a good person to bring in to direct something different. Could it still have been bad? Sure, but you
Okay,
know,
but at the same time too, I we're talking a lot about directors. One thing we have to also kind of think about is directors don't. Yes, they are a big part of whether or not a movie's good or not, but they're not the sole reason why a movie is good or bad. You also have to have good writers. You also have to have a studio that will let them make a good movie without forcing them to push a bunch of politics into a show or movie or whatever it is.
yep, yes. Disney is a big problem in a
I
thorn
feel like
in many directors' sides.
why The Mandalorian worked is because Disney let Jon Favreau create a, you know, very talented group of directors and writers and let them cook and didn't influence much. Didn't try to get
Yeah,
involved much.
I wonder if they would let him do that if there is a world in which we could get Jon Favreau as the head of Lucasfilm. I wonder if that would be an opportunity where we would be able to do something like see them take more of a back seat and we don't see Star Wars Disney-fied as much.
Now, the big problem with even this. So one of the videos I watched about that went over this when they talked about this article was about um or so it was from Geeks and Gamers. I don't know if you watched them.
Uh-huh.
Um one thing they said was, basically the damage to Star Wars is already done. Star Wars is not like Marvel where they can just spin it off into some alternate universe or whatever. Yes, technically they could still open that door. They have the um World Between World Between Worlds? Why am I blanking on
Yeah,
this? Yeah, World Between Worlds.
it's World Tours.
They could open that up and do just about anything they wanted to do with that. They've already established time travel is somewhat possible with the World Between Worlds. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I feel like that that's one of the big things why people are facing Marvel fatigue is nothing really matters because, if someone dies, they theoretically can just bring them back because, oh, multiverse stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I think what's I think what Star Wars needs to do, and maybe they've started taking the advice, but they did a bad job of it, is they need to forget the prequel era, or the sequel era. They need to go back before Phantom Menace. Particularly, they need to go back to the old Republic era and dive into a lot of those stories. Now, before they do that, they need to make sure that someone like Jon Favreau and a I don't know, uh, 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 I would say not John, I would say Dave Filoni, as long as he's not, I'm wondering how much of it is maybe he's, actually on board with some of these things, how much of it's maybe it's just Disney being Disney and he has maybe less
see,
control than we think.
I,
But,
I,
you
I have
know,
wondered that too, if
someone
maybe
like that,
I have wondered that too, if maybe his title as creative head is more, like, symbolic than anything else. I don't know.
yeah. But
I
but
kind of
we
hope
need
that's the
someone
case, but I'm not really convinced of that.
we need Star Wars fans to be over these projects making something, and you need to get away from the sequel era for a time. Gain their trust by making good content within the old Republic era. Get away from the Skywalker saga. Get away from all of it. Get away from it all. Go back to Old Republic. Make some good stories. Make some brutal stories. I mean, Darth Bane, you can make an rated R movie. You could make a what TV 14, I don't know whatever the ratings are for. You can make some pretty brutal shows within the realm of darker shows within the realm of the Old Republic that would be, you could tell a really good story. You could uh, you know, show something that's pretty cool. And I mean, I understand Star Wars. Here's the thing. Star Wars is a kid show, but most of those kids have grown up, and if you make something that's a little darker, you're not gonna hurt the audience. The audience is still gonna watch it. You don't have to go that route, but I'm saying
And
like
okay, Dis
go back to the old Republic era, and then after a couple years, like you said, 5 years, go back to the sequels, but give it a break in like for 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, and then go back and try and fix that. But don't try and fix it right now because, in all honesty, I'm tired of the sequel era. I'm tired of part of the reason why I got a little tired there at the end of Bad Batch was because they tried to tie into it. I don't care. Don't just leave it alone for a little while and
yeah,
do something new for a change.
yeah, because again, making anything after Return of the Jedi, all roads lead to the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable. But to your point of, possibly some darker themes, more violent Star Wars, they kind of, not gonna say open the door, but they cracked the door with the Acolyte with blood for the first time in
hmm
Star Wars. Or not for the first time, but first time in a long time.
Since 1979.
Yeah,
No, that's not right. 77.
77,
Sorry.
77. Yeah. So yeah, they didn't open the door, but they cracked the door for that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. On one hand,
I
I
there's
would
a
agree with that. I would love to see them do Darth Bane and do him justice. I'd love to see them do Revan or Darth Nihilus or like the height of the Sith Empire. I don't know if I trust Disney Star Wars. I don't know if I trust Dave Filoni anymore. And so herein lies the problem.
Yep, yep. Well, David, to sum up what we've been talking about, because we've been recording for a good long time, Kathleen Kennedy possibly is going to be retiring.
Or forced out,
I
depending
would
on what
love,
this article actually said. Yeah.
yeah, I would love to see her leave as head of Disney Star Wars, as head of Lucasfilm. I would love to see that happen. Um, as a person, no ill will towards her, but she's done some boneheaded things in what she's greenlit in Star Wars, and I do not like her for that. Wish her the best, but she's old. She needs to go retire, enjoy her family, grandkids, whatever she has. I don't know. I don't really care either. Um, will it happen? We'll see. If it happens in October, we'll definitely be talking about it. But just because she leaves does not mean we're out of the woods yet. It could get worse. It could just be on a downhill trajectory. Who knows? I just know that I still love Star Wars. I still love Legends. We are going to be running over a lot of Legends over the next year and just as we continue,
Right.
because this is what we like to do. We like to talk about Star Wars, but we may not care too much for the new stuff. So David, we might just be becoming old heads, but it's okay.
I will say that's you're probably in the same boat as me with this as to why I kind of want to start talking about more of the Legends novels and stuff, and some of the games and other stuff, because I do love Star Wars and I want to talk about Star Wars, but sometimes I want to talk about good Star Wars. The new stuff
Yeah,
isn't necessarily good Star Wars.
yeah, yeah. Well, Kathleen Kennedy is retiring. Yay! At least we hope so.
We
David,
hope so.
David, do you have anything else to add for this episode? It's been a long one. I was kind of thinking that we may not have run so long, but we found plenty to talk about. So,
Yes,
do you
we
have anything
did.
else to add?
Not pertaining to the video or the podcast. So if you don't have anything else to add, I do want to say this.
All right.
Next week, y'all come back. We're gonna be talking about Andor, not the show, the character this time. Um. So yeah, if you want to hear us read the wiki article on Cassian Andor and see if there's even anything Legends related with this character,
Yeah. Hmm.
come on.
Well,
That's what we're going to be talking about. And we may or may not have some funny articles from starships.com. So stay tuned for that.
we'll we'll look into that. With that, if you enjoy this episode, please leave a like on it. And if you had any thoughts, leave comments down below. We love to read them and we will try to respond to them. Obviously, it's not a matter of us having too many to respond to, it's a matter of us actually responding. So, anyways, please hope you enjoyed. Please come back next time for more Star Wars content. We will be here every single Monday on X Wing Radio. So join us. Bye.
Peace out, y'all.